April 23, 1945, Southampton Docks, southern England. Rain falls on the harbor as a transport ship from Normandy unloads its cargo, 473 German prisoners of war, most between 16 and 21 years old, boys swept up in the final desperate levees of a collapsing Reich. They descend the gangway in silence, wearing tattered Wehrmacht uniforms, hollow-eyed from hunger and exhaustion, expecting, according to everything the Ministry of Propaganda taught them, to be met with violence, degradation, perhaps execution. The Goebbels machine had been explicit and relentless. British soldiers bayonet prisoners for sport. British civilians stone German captives in the streets. The decadent Anglo-Saxon Empire reserves its deepest cruelty for the young warriors of the fatherland. What meets them instead is a British Army sergeant, 40-something and balding, who calls them forward in accented German and distributes wool blankets, cigarettes, and mugs of tea so hot they burn hands unaccustomed to warmth, while beyond the checkpoint, a Red Cross volunteer, an elderly woman with kind eyes, smiles and says in perfect German, "Welcome to England, boys. You're safe now." The cognitive dissonance is so profound that several prisoners begin to cry. These boys were raised on certainty. From age 10 enrolled in Hitler Youth, they memorized catechisms of racial superiority and enemy degeneracy. The British Empire was dying, its people soft and cowardly, its society corroded by democracy and Jewish influence, its military incompetent compared to the disciplined might of German arms. They learned that Englishmen were effeminate, that English women were immoral, that English culture was a facade masking spiritual bankruptcy. They were shown propaganda films of London burning during the Blitz, presented not as evidence of Luftwaffe effectiveness, but as proof of British weakness, their inability to defend even their own capital. The message was hammered home in schools, youth camps, party rallies. Germany fought for civilization itself, and the enemies arrayed against the Reich were not merely adversaries, but existential threats to European culture, subhumans and decadents who must be destroyed or subjugated. By 1945, these certainties had sustained them through years of increasingly desperate warfare. The boy from Dusseldorf, drafted at 17 after his entire Hitler Youth cohort was sent to the Eastern Front, believed he was defending his mother and sister from Bolshevik rapists and British imperialists. The farm boy from Baden-Württemberg, who joined the Waffen-SS at 16 because his village had no other options after the regular Wehrmacht took all men over 18, genuinely thought he was part of a holy crusade to preserve European civilization. The teenage clerk from Hamburg, pulled from his apprenticeship in 1944 and given 2 weeks of training before being sent to France, accepted without question that surrender to the British meant torture, starvation, and probable death. Better to fight to the last than fall into their hands. The surrender came anyway, overwhelmed by Allied advances that moved faster than propaganda could explain away. Some were captured in the Rhineland, others in Holland, a few in Denmark as the Reich's northern territories collapsed. They expected immediate brutality, beatings, humiliation, summary execution for SS members. Instead, they were searched for weapons, given medical attention if wounded, fed, not generously but fed, and transported to England with a mechanical efficiency that suggested not hatred but bureaucratic indifference. The absence of expected cruelty was itself unsettling, creating a low-level anxiety that intensified as they were loaded onto ships and sailed across the Channel, each boy alone with his thoughts, wondering if the horror was merely delayed, if the true punishment awaited them on British soil. The trucks carry them north through the English countryside at dusk, Somerset, Gloucestershire, into the Midlands, and what they see through the canvas flaps contradicts everything they were taught. They pass through villages intact and orderly, stone cottages with smoke rising from chimneys, children playing in schoolyards, women shopping at markets, men working in fields, all going about their lives with a normalcy that seems impossible for a nation supposedly on the brink of collapse. A 19-year-old from Munich, who watched his city burn under Allied bombing raids, stares at a British town, Cheltenham the sign says, and counts the undamaged buildings, the functioning streetlights, the people queuing peacefully outside a cinema. His companion, a Hitler Youth leader from Berlin, whispers, "Where are the ruins? They told us we destroyed England." The answer is obvious but unacceptable. The Luftwaffe failed, Germany lost the air war, and England endured. They arrive at Camp 39, near Stafford, after midnight. The camp is not what they imagined. Not a brutal labor facility or a punishment center, but a collection of prefabricated huts surrounded by barbed wire, guard towers at the corners, but not heavily manned, searchlights sweeping the perimeter more from habit than necessity. A British officer, Captain David Harrow, addresses them in German learned during university years at Heidelberg before the war. You are prisoners of war under the protection of the Geneva Convention. You will be housed, fed, and treated according to international law. You will work, but not beyond reasonable hours. You will be paid a small wage for your labor. You will not be beaten, starved, or humiliated. If you have complaints, you may file them through proper channels. If you are ill or injured, you will receive medical care. We are not your friends, but we are not monsters either. You are young men who fought for a cause that has failed. How you conduct yourselves here will determine what kind of men you become. The speech is translated for those whose German is weak, and then they are assigned to barracks, wooden structures with bunk beds, thin mattresses, coal stoves for heat. More Spartan than comfortable, but dry and secure. That first night, lying in darkness, several boys quietly admit to each other what none will say aloud to British guards. This is already better than the last 6 months in Wehrmacht service, better than the frozen trenches in the Ardennes, better than the chaotic retreat across France, better than the fear that accompanied every day under crumbling German command. The admission feels like betrayal, but it is also undeniably true. Morning brings the first real shock: breakfast. The prisoners line up expecting gruel or moldy bread, standard Wehrmacht rations in the war's final months, but receive instead porridge with milk, toast with margarine, tea with sugar, and an egg. 1 egg per person. The boy from Hamburg, who has not seen an egg in 8 months, holds it in his palm as though it might vanish, then eats it so slowly that the British mess staff watch with a mixture of pity and discomfort. A 16-year-old from Dresden begins crying silently while eating his toast, overwhelmed not by gratitude but by the collapse of his worldview. If the British are feeding them real food while their own nation starved them, what does that say about who the devils really were? After breakfast, Captain Harrow explains the camp routine. Work assignments 6 days per week, Sundays free for rest and recreation. Work will consist of farm labor on neighboring properties, planting, harvesting, fence repair, general maintenance, with fair treatment guaranteed by British agricultural supervisors. Prisoners will be paid 2 shillings per week, a pittance by British standards but usable for small purchases at the camp canteen. Cigarettes, chocolate, soap, writing paper. The announcement of payment stuns them. Paid for labor, prisoners paid wages. The propaganda never mentioned this possibility, perhaps because it would have undermined the narrative of British barbarity. But the greatest shock comes that afternoon when a convoy of trucks delivers supplies. Not just food and clothing, but books, footballs, musical instruments, art supplies, chess sets, writing materials. A British chaplain, Reverend Thomas Whitmore, announces that cultural and educational activities are not merely permitted, but encouraged. You are young men, not animals. Idleness breeds despair, and we have no interest in breaking your spirits. You may organize sports leagues, theatrical productions, study groups, religious services. We will provide materials within reason. This camp can be a prison that degrades you, or a community that allows you to maintain your humanity while we determine your futures. The choice, to a significant degree, is yours. That evening, a group gathers in one of the barracks, 20 boys trying to make sense of what they have experienced. An 18-year-old SS volunteer, still ideologically committed, insists this is psychological warfare, sophisticated manipulation designed to weaken their resolve. Others are less certain. A former student from Leipzig observes quietly, "If they are devils, they are very strange devils. They feed us and give us footballs. What kind of torture is this?" No one has a satisfactory answer, because the paradigm they were given does not account for enemies who behave with basic decency. Within 2 weeks, the psychological architecture begins to crumble. The prisoners are assigned to local farms, groups of 10 to 15 sent under minimal guard to help with spring planting, working alongside British farm hands and land girls, women conscripted into agricultural service to replace men sent to war. The German boys expect hostility, insults, perhaps sabotage of their work to justify punishment. Instead, they receive instruction, courtesy, and during tea breaks, the sacred British ritual that stops work twice daily, genuine conversation. A 20-year-old from Stuttgart works alongside a British farmer named George Harding. 56 years old, who lost his son at Normandy 3 months earlier. The German boy knows this because Harding mentions it casually while demonstrating proper fence post installation. My boy Tom used to help with this. Killed in France, June of '44. Sniper got him. The German freezes, uncertain how to respond, expecting rage or accusation. Instead, Harding continues hammering the post into soil, then adds, "Not your fault, lad. You're what, 19, 20? You didn't start this bloody war. You just got caught in it, same as Tom." The conversation moves on to fence construction techniques, but the German boy cannot stop thinking about it. This man whose son was killed fighting Germans shows no hatred toward a German prisoner working his land. The disconnect between expectation and reality is so severe it keeps him awake that night. At the camp, British guards maintain discipline but without cruelty. A prisoner caught stealing extra food from the mess, a boy so conditioned to scarcity he cannot adjust to regular meals, is punished with 2 days of latrine cleaning duty, not beaten, not starved, not humiliated before the other prisoners. A fight breaks out between two boys arguing about whether Hitler was justified in starting the war. The guards separate them, confiscate no privileges, issue a stern warning about maintaining order, and that is all. The proportionality of response, punishment fitting the offense rather than exceeding it to terrorize others, is foreign to boys raised under a regime where minor infractions brought savage consequences. Captain Harrow notices the bewilderment and addresses it during a camp assembly. "You seem surprised that we do not torture you. This says more about your former government than about ours. In Britain, we believe that human beings possess inherent dignity, that even enemies deserve basic decency, that civilization is measured not by how we treat friends, but by how we treat those who have wronged us. You are learning this lesson in captivity. I hope you remember it when you return home." May 1945. The war in Europe ends. Hitler is dead. Berlin has fallen. The Reich has ceased to exist. In Camp 39, the news is received with a complex mixture of relief, grief, and confusion. Relief that no more will die in service to a lost cause. Grief for the nation they believed in now revealed as a catastrophic failure. Confusion about what comes next. What future awaits them in a Germany that no longer exists as they knew it. Some prisoners refuse to believe the reports insisting that Hitler lives, that secret weapons are still being developed, that the war continues even if official surrender has been signed. Others accept reality, but retreat into bitter silence, unable to process the magnitude of their defeat. The British response is not triumphalist but matter of fact. The war is over. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. The occupation has begun. Captain Harrow addresses the camp with typical British understatement. "Gentlemen, your nation has been defeated. Your leaders have been arrested or are dead. Your cities are occupied by Allied forces. The government that sent you to fight no longer exists. This is not propaganda. This is simply what has happened. You are now prisoners not of a nation at war with yours, but of a nation responsible for rebuilding yours. How long you remain here depends on many factors, but eventually you will return home. What you return to will depend on how well we, and you, do our jobs in the coming months." The camp library is expanded, stocked with British newspapers and magazines that document the end of the war, the occupation of Germany, the discovery of concentration camps, Bergen-Belsen, Buchenwald, Dachau. The prisoners are not forced to read these accounts, but they are made available, and curiosity eventually overcomes resistance. A boy from Cologne reads a detailed report about Bergen-Belsen's liberation, accompanied by photographs that British censors debated publishing but ultimately released because, as one editor wrote, "The world must know." The photographs show piles of emaciated corpses, survivors who look more skeletal than human, mass graves, and British soldiers weeping as they try to provide aid to the dying. The Cologne boy brings the newspaper to his barracks, shows it to others. The initial reaction is denial. British propaganda, fabricated photographs, exaggerated accounts designed to justify Germany's destruction. But the evidence accumulates. Multiple newspapers, consistent details, photographs from different sources, testimonies from British soldiers who liberated the camps, and gradually, horribly, the possibility that these accounts are true begins to penetrate. Some still refuse to believe, others accept partial truth. The SS was guilty, but not the Wehrmacht, not ordinary Germans, not us. A few begin the painful process of understanding that their nation committed monstrous crimes, and that their service, however innocent they believed it to be, contributed to that monstrosity. June brings a new initiative: education. British authorities planning for Germany's post-war future recognize that these young prisoners represent a generation that received 12 years of Nazi indoctrination disguised as schooling. If Germany is to be rebuilt as a democracy, these boys must be taught actual history, actual science, actual literature, not the racial mythology and propaganda that passed for education under the Third Reich. The program is voluntary but incentivized. Prisoners who attend classes receive better work assignments, increased privileges, and priority consideration for early repatriation once denazification criteria are met. Reverend Whitmore organizes the curriculum with help from local volunteers, a retired headmaster from Stafford, a German Jewish refugee who fled to England in 1938, and a university lecturer who specializes in German literature. Classes begin in mathematics, English language, history, and basic science. The initial attendance is poor, 30 boys out of 473. But word spreads that the education is genuine, not propaganda in reverse, and that the instructors treat students with respect rather than contempt. A 17-year-old from Bremen attends the history class taught by Dr. Miriam Stein, the Jewish refugee. He expects her to rage against Germany, to use the classroom as a platform for revenge. Instead, she teaches European history from 1914 forward: the Treaty of Versailles, Weimar Republic, the rise of fascism, the failure of democratic institutions, the manipulation of economic crisis for political gain. She does not excuse Nazi crimes, but she contextualizes them, showing how a civilized nation descended into barbarism through a combination of legitimate grievances exploited by malicious actors, propaganda, fear, and the systematic dismantling of democratic norms. The Bremen boy raises his hand hesitantly. Were we all guilty? Even those who believed we were defending Germany? Dr. Stein considers this carefully. Guilt is complicated. Individual soldiers who fought honorably are different from those who committed atrocities. But everyone who supported the regime, even passively, even through ignorance, bears some responsibility for what the regime did with that support. You cannot separate the Wehrmacht from the Holocaust, the German people from their government's crimes. This is a hard truth. It is also necessary truth if Germany is to become something better. The class ends in uncomfortable silence. That evening, the Bremen boy writes in his diary, kept in English as practice: "She is Jewish. We were told Jews were our enemies, but she teaches us history, trying to make us understand, not just punishing us for what we did not know we were part of. I think she is kinder than we deserve. I think this is what they mean by civilization." July 1945. Summer heat transforms the camp. The prisoners, healthier now after months of adequate nutrition, organize football leagues. 16 teams competing in a tournament that Captain Harrow officiates personally, maintaining strict fairness even when matches become heated. British soldiers sometimes join the games during off-duty hours, playing alongside former enemies with the casual camaraderie of men who recognize that football transcends politics. A guard from Manchester, who played semi-professionally before the war, teaches German prisoners advanced techniques: proper heading, tactical positioning, the art of the through ball, the incongruity of the scene. British soldiers coaching German POWs in football strategy strikes observers as either absurd or hopeful, depending on perspective. The educational program expands. A mathematics instructor from Birmingham introduces algebra and geometry, shocked to discover that many prisoners received almost no real mathematical training during their Nazi schooling, which subordinated mathematics to ideology and practical military applications. A 19-year-old who should have learned calculus by now struggles with basic quadratic equations, his education sacrificed to years of Hitler Youth camping trips and racial theory lectures. The instructor, Mr. Peter Collins, works with him patiently. "You're not stupid, lad. You were deliberately kept ignorant. There's a difference. Ignorance can be fixed." Over 3 months, the boy advances from elementary algebra to trigonometry, experiencing for the first time the pure intellectual satisfaction of solving problems through logic rather than ideology. Dr. Stein's history class reaches 1939, the invasion of Poland, the beginning of the war. She presents German justifications, Danzig corridor disputes, ethnic German persecution, strategic necessities, then methodically dismantles them with evidence: manufactured provocations, falsified reports, Gleiwitz incident staged by SS. Hitler's documented intentions from Mein Kampf forward. A prisoner challenges her. But Poland was allied with Britain and France. They encircled Germany. We had to break out. Dr. Stein nods. Yes, this is what you were taught. Now look at the timeline. Who militarized first? Who violated treaties? Who systematically prepared for aggressive war? Poland threatened no one. Germany invaded because Hitler wanted Lebensraum, living space, which required conquering Eastern Europe and exterminating or enslaving the populations there. This was the plan from the beginning. Not defense. Conquest. The evidence is overwhelming, documented in captured German records, Hitler's own speeches, military planning documents. Several students leave the class angry, unwilling to accept that everything they believed was lies. But others stay, and over subsequent weeks they begin the painful process of reconstructing their understanding of history, their nation, themselves. August brings the atomic bombs and Japan's surrender. The prisoners react with horror to the photographs from Hiroshima, the scale of destruction, the casualties, the revelation that warfare has entered a new era where entire cities can be obliterated in seconds. But mixed with horror is a grim recognition. This is what total war means. What Germany unleashed on Europe. What comes back multiplied when you teach the world that civilian populations are legitimate targets. A former Luftwaffe recruit, who participated in raids over England in 1940, stares at the Hiroshima photographs and says quietly, "We began this. We bombed Warsaw, Rotterdam, London. We taught them that nothing is off limits, and they learned the lesson better than we did." The moral reckoning intensifies. Reverend Whitmore offers voluntary religious services, Catholic, Protestant, even informal discussions for the non-religious. But the sessions become less about theology and more about ethics, responsibility, forgiveness. A Catholic boy from Bavaria asks whether God can forgive Germany for the Holocaust. Whitmore responds carefully, "God's forgiveness is God's business. Your responsibility is different. To acknowledge what happened, to understand how it happened, to ensure it never happens again. Forgiveness without repentance is meaningless. Repentance without action is incomplete. If you want forgiveness, earn it through building a Germany that rejects everything the Nazis stood for." The camp canteen receives donated books, German literature banned by the Nazis, authors they never knew existed because the regime burned their works or forbade their teaching. A prisoner discovers Heinrich Heine, the 19th century German Jewish poet whose books were among the first burned in 1933, and reads, "Where they burn books, they will ultimately burn people also." The prophecy is so precise, so horrifying in retrospect, that the prisoner shows it to everyone in his barracks. Another finds remarks, "All Quiet on the Western Front," banned because it portrayed war as horror rather than heroic adventure, and recognizes his own experience in its pages. The fear, the absurdity, the waste of young lives for old men's ambitions. British authorities announced that repatriation will begin in 1946, prioritized by age and denazification status. Younger prisoners who demonstrate genuine rejection of Nazi ideology will return first. Older prisoners and those suspected of war crimes will remain longest, possibly facing trials. The announcement creates incentive to engage with the educational program, to demonstrate change, but also raises questions about authenticity. Are they truly changing, or merely performing change to secure earlier release? Some prisoners wrestle with this honestly. Others cynically game the system. Most fall somewhere between. Their transformations incomplete but genuine. Their futures uncertain, but no longer tethered to a regime that no longer exists. September 1945. Autumn arrives, and with it letters from home. The first mail many prisoners have received in months. The letters describe a Germany unrecognizable, cities flattened, infrastructure destroyed, population starving, occupation forces controlling everything, former Nazi officials arrested or executed, ordinary citizens struggling to survive amid rubble and shortages. A boy from Dresden learns his city was firebombed in February, that his neighborhood no longer exists, that his father died in the fires. His mother is living in a refugee camp near Leipzig. The letter is matter of fact, devoid of emotion, written by someone too exhausted for feelings. Reading these letters, the prisoners confront a bitter irony. They are better off in British captivity than their families are in occupied Germany. They have regular meals, warm shelter, medical care, education, safety, everything their families lack. The realization produces complex guilt. Guilt for being safe while loved ones suffer. Guilt for participating in a regime that brought this destruction upon Germany. Guilt for the relief they feel that they are here rather than there. One prisoner writes back to his mother, "I am fed and housed and treated well. I am ashamed to tell you this, knowing what you endure. But I want you to know I am safe. I want you to know that the British are not what we were told. I want you to know that I am learning why we lost, and it was not because we were weak, but because we were wrong." The educational program introduces a new subject, democratic governance. Mr. Collins, the mathematics teacher, explains parliamentary systems, checks and balances, the principle that governmental power derives from citizen consent rather than leader decree. The prisoners, raised under dictatorship, find the concepts alien and inefficient. But who makes decisions if everyone argues? How can a nation act quickly if Parliament must debate everything? Collins nods. Democracy is slow and messy. It is also why Britain survived and Germany collapsed. Dictatorships make fast decisions, but they cannot correct mistakes because dissent is crushed. Democracies make slow decisions, but they can change course when proven wrong. Your Führer led Germany to ruin because no one could stop him. Churchill can be voted out if the British people lose confidence. That difference matters. The lesson plants seeds. What if Germany could be rebuilt as a democracy? What if the catastrophe of the past 12 years could be prevented in the future through institutions that limit power, protect dissent, and allow peaceful transitions of authority? The ideas are fragile, easily dismissed as naive fantasy, but they persist, growing stronger as the prisoners observe how British society functions. Imperfectly, often frustratingly, but without the terror that characterized every moment under Nazi rule. October 1945. The Nuremberg trials begin. British newspapers report the proceedings in detail. Göring, Ribbentrop, Keitel, Jodl, others in the dock, facing charges that include waging aggressive war, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, a new legal category created to address the systematic murder of millions. The prisoners follow the trials obsessively, reading transcripts, studying photographs, debating whether the tribunal is legitimate justice or victor's revenge. Dr. Stein dedicates her history class to analyzing the trial's legal and moral foundations. She presents the prosecution's case. Germany systematically planned aggressive war, violated international treaties, murdered civilians as policy, industrialized genocide, and committed atrocities so severe they exceeded existing legal frameworks. She also presents the defense arguments, victors judging the vanquished, ex post facto law, allied crimes ignored, individual defendants following orders or unaware of full scope of atrocities. Then she asks the class, is this justice or is this revenge disguised as justice? The debate is fierce, revealing how much the prisoners have changed over 6 months. Some still defend the accused. They served Germany. They should not be judged by Germany's enemies. Others argue for accountability. If we want Germany to have a future, we must admit what happened and punish those responsible. One prisoner, the boy from Bremen, who has become Dr. Stein's most engaged student, offers a synthesis. Maybe both are true. Maybe it is victor's justice and also necessary justice. Maybe the trials are imperfect, but we cannot rebuild without accountability. If we deny what happened, if we protect those who ordered these crimes, then we learn nothing and we will do it again. Dr. Stein lets the silence stretch, then adds, Nuremberg matters not because it is perfect justice. No justice involving war can be perfect, but because it establishes a principle. Leaders who wage aggressive war and commit atrocities can be held accountable. This is new. Previously, leaders who committed such acts either won and were celebrated, or lost and fled into exile. Now they stand trial. They must answer for their actions. This principle, if it holds, might prevent future wars because leaders will know they cannot hide behind national sovereignty if they commit crimes against humanity. It is a beginning, imperfect, but necessary. That night, several prisoners discuss whether they themselves bear guilt. Not legal guilt. They were soldiers following orders, fighting what they believed was defensive war, but moral guilt for participating in a system that committed genocide. The discussion reaches no comfortable conclusions, but the fact that it occurs at all represents a transformation from the boys who arrived 7 months ago. certain of their righteousness. November 1945. Winter approaches. The prisoners have been in British captivity for 7 months, and Camp 39 has become a strange hybrid. Still a prison camp with wire and guards, but also an informal school, a community, a place where young men learn to become something other than what the Reich made them. The football tournaments continue, now joined by British teams from nearby towns. Matches that draw local spectators who gradually overcome their initial discomfort at cheering for German prisoners. A prisoner from Essen scores a brilliant goal against a Stafford pub team, and the British crowd applauds. Because sport transcends politics and beauty is beauty regardless of who creates it. The educational achievements are remarkable. 60 prisoners now attend classes regularly, several advancing to university-level work in mathematics and literature. A boy who arrived functionally illiterate, his schooling sacrificed to years of Hitler Youth indoctrination, can now read Goethe in the original and discuss the moral philosophy in Faust. Another, who showed aptitude for mathematics, is working through calculus problems Mr. Collins brings from Birmingham University, solving them with an elegance that prompts Collins to write letters recommending the boy for university admission once repatriation occurs. But the most profound education is moral rather than academic. The prisoners organize a camp assembly, their initiative approved by Captain Harrow, where they publicly discuss what they have learned, what they must carry home when repatriation begins. The Bremen boy, now 18, stands before 400 fellow prisoners and speaks in careful English, then translates into German. We were told the British were devils. We were told they would torture us, starve us, humiliate us. Instead, they fed us, educated us, treated us with basic human decency. This does not mean they are saints. They are not. They fight wars, they make mistakes, they have their own sins. But they showed us something we were never taught, that you can defeat an enemy without becoming monstrous, that you can be strong without being cruel, that civilization is not weakness but strength of a different kind. When we return to Germany, we must remember this. We must rebuild our country not as a dictatorship that crushes dissent, but as a democracy that protects dignity. We must teach our children not racial superiority but human equality. We must never forget what our nation did, and we must never allow it to happen again. The speech receives mixed reactions. Some applaud, others sit in hostile silence, a few walk out. But the fact that it occurs, that a prisoner can publicly criticize Nazi ideology and advocate for democracy without punishment, demonstrates the transformation that has occurred. These boys are no longer the same young men who arrived expecting devils. December 1945, the winter solstice, the darkest day of the year, but also the turning point, the moment when light begins to return. Captain Harrow announces that the first repatriation convoy will depart in February. 50 prisoners, the youngest and most thoroughly denazified, returning to begin rebuilding Germany under Allied occupation. The list is posted, and beside each name is a brief assessment. Demonstrated genuine engagement with educational program and understanding of democratic principles, or showed significant transformation from initial Nazi ideology, or simply ready for return and reconstruction work. The Bremen boy, whose name is Franz Weber, is on the list. So is the Stuttgart prisoner who worked alongside George Harding, whose name is Johann Kessler. So is the mathematics prodigy, the Goethe reader, the former SS volunteer who spent 6 months wrestling with guilt before accepting that his ideology was poison and his service supported atrocity. Not all the best students are selected. Some are too young to return to the chaos of occupied Germany. But those chosen represent the possibility of German renewal. Young men who arrived as indoctrinated soldiers and leave as skeptical, questioning, morally aware citizens. Franz stands before his barracks on a cold December evening, looking across the camp toward the wire and the British guards beyond. 7 months ago, he expected to die here, or to suffer such profound abuse that death would be preferable. Instead, he learned mathematics and literature, read banned books, discussed democracy with British instructors, played football with former enemies, and slowly, painfully, reconstructed his understanding of himself and his nation. He thinks about the lies he was taught, that Germans were superior, that other peoples were subhuman, that Britain was degenerate and weak, that the Reich was righteous and its enemies evil. Every lie has been systematically demolished, not through British propaganda but through experience, observation, evidence. The British are not saints, but they are not devils. They are human beings who defeated Germany not through racial superiority, but through democratic resilience, industrial capacity, moral clarity about what they were fighting for, and the ability to extend basic decency even to defeated enemies. Johann joins him at the wire. Ready to go home? Franz shakes his head. I don't know if the Germany we're returning to is home anymore. It's something else. Something we have to build. Johann nods. Maybe that's better. The old Germany brought us to this. The new one. Maybe we can make it worth believing in. They stand in silence. Two young men preparing to return to a broken nation with fragile hope and hard-won knowledge. Uncertain but no longer afraid. February 1946. 50 German prisoners board trucks at Camp 39, destination Southampton, then ships to Hamburg. They carry with them certificates of completion from British educational programs, letters of reference from their instructors, and books, gifts from British volunteers who believed these young men deserved tools for rebuilding. As the convoy passes through the camp gates, Captain Harrow salutes each truck, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable 7 months ago, when these were enemy soldiers deserving only detention. Now they are young men returning to immense responsibility, rebuilding a nation from ruins, both physical and moral. The ship crosses the channel in rough seas, arriving at Hamburg's devastated port on February 12th. The prisoners disembark into a Germany they barely recognize. Skeletal buildings, rubble-choked streets, populations scavenging for survival, British occupation forces maintaining order amid chaos. Franz Weber walks through Hamburg's remains toward the refugee camp where his mother lives, carrying his British-issued books and letters, wondering what he can possibly say to explain where he has been, what he has learned, how profoundly he has changed. Most will rebuild successfully. Johann Kessler returns to Stuttgart, enrolls in technical college when it reopens, studies engineering, and spends his career designing infrastructure for the Federal Republic. Franz Weber becomes a teacher, educating a generation of Germans who will grow up in democracy and cannot imagine dictatorship. The mathematics prodigy becomes a professor. The Goethe reader opens a bookstore. The former SS volunteer, who spent months confronting his complicity, becomes a social worker helping refugees and displaced persons, his lifelong penance for his teenage allegiance to evil. Not all succeed. Some prisoners return to find families destroyed, futures impossible, and embrace the bitter resentment that will fuel fringe political movements for decades. But they are a minority. Most carry forward what they learned in British captivity, that democracy, while imperfect, is preferable to dictatorship, that other peoples are not subhuman but simply human, that civilization is measured not by conquest, but by how societies treat the vulnerable and defeated, that nations can be strong without being cruel. Camp 39 closes in 1947, its mission complete. The land returned to the farmer who owned it before the war. But the education persists, rippling through generations. In the 1980s, a German television documentary interviews several former Camp 39 prisoners, now elderly men with grandchildren who grew up in the Federal Republic's stable democracy. Franz Weber, retired teacher, speaks directly to the camera. When I arrived in England, I was 17 years old and absolutely certain of my beliefs, that Germany was righteous, that our enemies were evil, that we fought for civilization itself. Everything I believed was a lie, carefully constructed by a regime that used our idealism to commit atrocities. The British could have punished us. We deserved punishment. Instead, they educated us. They showed us what we had fought against. Not degeneracy, but decency. Not weakness, but the kind of strength that extends mercy to enemies. I spent 7 months as a British prisoner, and those 7 months saved me from spending the rest of my life as a prisoner of the ideology that destroyed my nation. The interviewer asks whether he is grateful for his captivity. Franz considers this carefully. Grateful is the wrong word. I am aware that I was given something I did not earn and did not deserve, a second chance, an education, the opportunity to become someone other than what the Reich made me. The British were not motivated by love for Germany. They were motivated by their own interest in building a stable, democratic Germany that would never threaten Europe again. But their pragmatism required treating us with basic humanity, teaching us rather than merely punishing us. And in that pragmatic decision was a profound moral lesson, that even defeated enemies deserve the dignity of truth, the possibility of redemption, the chance to rebuild. We were told the British were devils. They taught us we were wrong, Not through propaganda, but through their actions, which spoke louder than any propaganda could. That is the education I carry still, 55 years after returning from Camp 39. That is what I taught my students, what I hope they teach their children. Judge people by their actions, not by what you are told about them. Seek truth, even when it destroys your comfortable certainties. And remember that the worst atrocities in history were committed by people who were absolutely certain they were righteous. The documentary ends with footage of Franz visiting England, returning to the site of Camp 39, now farmland again, with no trace of barracks or wire. He stands in a wheat field, now 80 years old, and says simply, "They were kinder than we deserved." I hope Germany has earned that kindness through the decades since. I hope we never forget what happens when we reject kindness, when we embrace cruelty, when we tell ourselves that some human beings matter less than others. That is the lesson of Camp 39. Not that the British were perfect, but that they chose decency over vengeance, education over punishment, and in making that choice, they helped build the Germany that exists today. Imperfect, yes, but democratic, peaceful, and committed to ensuring the atrocities of the Nazi era never occur again.